A gunshot shattered the chandelier above Valentina Russo's head, just as the entire Moretti organization turned to watch her being fired. Seconds earlier, Mafia boss Dante Moretti had accused his sexy, curvy secretary of leaking the route to his armored convoy. Now Valentina lay across his body on the marble floor, blood spreading through her white silk blouse from a bullet meant for his heart. Dante's men captured the shooter, but the assassin carried Valentina's private office key and a transfer receipt bearing her signature. Before midnight, the 5 families would vote on whether Dante was still fit to lead, and his secretary appeared to have arranged his murder. Yet while the evidence condemned her, Dante noticed an impossible detail. Valentina had moved before the rifle appeared, as though she had known exactly where the shot would come from. As her pulse weakened beneath his fingers, she whispered, "Don't trust the man who gives you my phone." The chandelier continued to shed crystals after the shot, each fragment ticking across the ballroom floor like ice. Dante Moretti did not hear. The shouting at first, he heard only Valentina's breath, thin and wet against his collar, and the unfinished warning she had forced through bloodless lips. "Do not trust the man who gives you my phone." His right hand was trapped beneath her shoulder. His left pressed the wound high on her back, where the bullet had entered after crossing the white silk of her blouse. There was no exit wound. He knew enough battlefield medicine to understand what that meant, and enough about Valentina to know she would hate the panic trying to enter his voice. "Stay with me." Her eyelids moved but did not open. Dante lifted his head at 27. He was the youngest man ever to hold the Moretti chair. Broad-shouldered in a black tailored suit, his cold, angular face made harsher by the black and gray tattoos rising from his open collar. Similar ink covered his hands where they held her. He never raised his voice when anger would do less work than silence. "Lock the estate," he said. "No one leaves." The room obeyed. Marco Belandi, his security chief, dragged the captured shooter through the shattered west doors. The man was alive, though one knee bent in a direction nature had not intended. Marco was 40, compact and immaculately dressed, with silver beginning at his temples and the calm manners of an old family retainer. He had served Dante's father before serving Dante. Tonight, a fine spray of glass marked one side of his midnight suit. "We took him in the gallery," Marco said. "He had this." He placed a brass key inside a clear evidence sleeve. The tiny VR stamped on its bow identified it as the private key to Valentina's office. A second sleeve held a bank receipt authorizing $2 million to a shell company controlled by the shooter. Valentina's signature appeared at the bottom in the decisive upward stroke Dante had seen on 10,000 documents. Around them, 12 captains watched the woman Dante had accused only moments earlier. Valentina Russo was 29. With chestnut hair pinned in a loose high twist, a youthful round face, and a soft, naturally plus-size figure that her ivory blouse and charcoal skirt had followed without disguising. For 4 years she had organized Dante's days, anticipated his enemies, and remembered which captain lied when he touched his wedding ring. Tonight he had used that intimacy as evidence against her. Dr. Elena Caruso arrived with the estate medical team. "Move your hand when I say not before." Elena cut through silk, packed the wound, and fitted an oxygen mask over Valentina's face. The bullet had entered beneath the left shoulder blade. Her blood pressure was falling. The estate clinic could stabilize her, but the bullet lay too close to the subclavian artery for treatment there. St. Catherine's Surgical Suite, Elena said. Now the convoy route was compromised, Marco reminded Dante. The hospital may be the second half of the attack. It was the practical objection Dante should have made himself. Valentina had allegedly sold the route of the armored convoy meant to carry him to tonight's five-family conclave. At midnight, the other families would vote on his authority over the Port Newark shipping corridor. If he failed to appear, his enemies would call it an admission that the Moretti organization could no longer protect its own leader. Dante looked at Valentina. Use the laundry tunnel. 2 decoy ambulances. No electronic dispatch. Marco nodded, already issuing orders. As the stretcher rolled away, Captain Rocco Vale picked up a black phone near the overturned lectern. Boss. Hers. Dante's attention snapped to him. Rocco was a cousin through Dante's mother. A heavy man with an impatient mouth. He held the phone by its edges as if preserving evidence. Valentina's warning returned with terrible precision. Do not trust the man who gives you my phone. Put it down, Dante said. Rocco froze. Marco crossed the floor, took the device in a Faraday pouch, and logged the transfer with 2 witnesses. Rocco protested that he had only found it, but Dante silenced him with a glance. The shooter laughed from the doorway. Too late. Dante approached him. Who paid you? Your secretary. You will need a better last answer. The assassin spat blood onto the marble. Ask her why she changed your motorcade from River Road to the Holland approach. Ask her why she copied your biometric seal yesterday at 6:14. You trusted the body before you trusted the numbers. That's why she got close. Marco's team had already found both actions in the access logs. Valentina had changed the route, and she had opened the secure cabinet containing Dante's encrypted signing token. Those true acts formed the spine of the case against her. Yet she had crossed 6 feet before the sniper fired. Dante had seen her eyes lift to the dark gallery, not in surprise, but calculation. She had known the angle. If she had hired the shooter, taking the bullet made no sense. If she had staged the wound, choosing a round that remained inside her body beside a major artery was madness. Elena called from the tunnel entrance. Dante, decide. We leave now or she dies. Here he followed the stretcher. Marco caught his sleeve. The conclave begins in 5 hours. The attack has already reached your inner house. Let me send the doctor while I move you to the bunker. Dante looked down at the dark blood coating his tattooed hand. 4 minutes earlier, he had stripped Valentina of her position and ordered her detained. She had answered by saving his life. I am going to the hospital. That is what they want. Then make it expensive for them. In the armored ambulance, Elena worked while Dante sat strapped opposite the stretcher. Valentina's blood pressure steadied, then fell again. Her fingers moved against the sheet. Dante leaned close. Blue 7, she murmured. Not a route, a test. What is Blue 7? Her eyes opened for 1 second. Only 3 men knew. The monitor alarm sharpened. Elena pushed Dante back and began another transfusion. Outside, rain started against the ambulance roof. Marco's voice came over the protected radio. 1 decoy had been attacked at the Holland Tunnel approach, the exact route shown in the leaked convoy file. The attackers had known the published plan, but not the laundry tunnel departure. Then Marco added the detail that changed the shape of the night. The captured sniper had stopped breathing during transport. His restraints were intact. There was no visible wound beyond those sustained during capture. Someone inside Dante's locked estate had killed him before he could be questioned again. Valentina had built the Moretti office around one principle. People lied, but sequences did not. 4 years earlier, before Dante inherited the chair, he had found her correcting 3 years of false port invoices at a legitimate logistics subsidiary. She had not known he was watching. She had simply placed every discrepancy in chronological order until the theft became obvious. Dante hired her as executive secretary because she could hold a room full of competing facts without dropping one. Within a year, she managed the calendars, access tiers, legal filings, and secure communications linking the Moretti Group's lawful companies to the private structure beneath them. At St. Catherine's, her competence survived even while she lay unconscious. The hospital admitted her under the alias Rose Valenti, a name she had created 6 months earlier as part of an emergency protocol. The surgical team arrived without using the public paging system. A blood unit matching her rare type waited in the secured refrigerator because Valentina had added senior staff to a confidential donor registry after an earlier attack on one of Dante's captains. She prepared for everyone except herself, Alina said. Outside the operating theater, Dante stood with his blood-stained shirt under a borrowed black coat. Rain darkened the high windows. She prepared for herself, too. We just did not know where to look. Marco had divided the 7th floor into rings. No one entered the inner corridor without a physical search, and all hospital cameras fed to an isolated recorder. Rocco and the other captains remained at the estate under guard. The captured shooter's body had been sealed for autopsy. At 9:22 p.m., Surgeon Amelia Grant came through the doors. The bullet had nicked the edge of Valentina's shoulder blade and lodged beside, but not inside, the artery they had removed it. She had lost dangerous amounts of blood and would not be mobile tonight, but she was alive. Dante absorbed the relief without letting it reach his expression. Can she speak briefly when she wakes? If you pressure her, I will remove you. Marco waited until the surgeon left. The conclave has been moved forward. 11:30. Bellini says your absence transfers your proxy votes to a temporary council. That would give the council authority to suspend Dante's control of the port. The Moretti organization had spent 2 years negotiating a legitimate redevelopment compact worth hundreds of millions. Whoever controlled the vote tonight could redirect the contracts and the shipping corridor. Who knew Blue 7? Dante asked. Marco's face remained composed. You, me, and Valentina. It was the emergency route classification we used during last year's federal inspection. She said it was a test, not a route. Anesthetic confusion. Dante studied the older man. Marco had taught him to strip and clean a pistol when he was 12. He had stood beside Dante at his father's funeral and broken the news of his mother's death. Familiarity was not innocence, but neither was a riddle proof. Bring me the complete route history, Dante said. Paper, not a summary. Marco left to retrieve it. At 9:41, Valentina woke. Her face was pale against the pillow. Chestnut curls loosened around her cheeks. A thick dressing covered her upper back and shoulder. Her left arm was immobilized in a sling. Dante took the chair beside her but did not touch her. Her first words were, "Did the decoy survive?" 2 men injured. No deaths. She closed her eyes with relief. "Why did you change the route?" he asked. "Because the original was poisoned." "How did you know?" 3 weeks ago, convoy invoices began carrying approval marks 11 seconds before the requests entered the system. I thought it was a clock sync problem. It wasn't. Speaking cost her. She paused until the monitor settled. Someone had a mirror of the signing queue. They could see secure movements before approval. Why not tell me? I tried. The draft vanished. The audit request went to Marco. He closed it as a server error. Dante did not react outwardly. Blue 7. I created 3 false root amendments this afternoon. Blue 7 went only to Marco. Gray 4 went only to Rocco. Green 9 went to Deputy Director Owen Shaw at the Port Authority. Each file had the same convoy time and a different approach. The decoy was attacked on Blue 7. Valentina turned her face toward him. Pain and vindication mixed in her eyes, but there was no triumph. Then you know where the leak sits. Marco says Blue 7 is an old emergency classification known to all 3 of us. He named it last year. I reused the label because he would recognize it and believe the route was authentic. The logic was clean. The accusation against Marco was not. The shooter carried your key and your signature. My office key disappeared Tuesday and returned Wednesday morning. I changed the lock request, but Marco's department canceled it. The signature is real in shape, false in pressure. I signed transfer orders on a glass pad. Someone exported a vector copy and printed it onto thermal stock. You opened my biometric cabinet at 6:14 yesterday. Yes, to rotate the signing token. I found 2 simultaneous sessions and killed 1. The remaining session produced the receipt you saw. Every answer made the true actions more dangerous, not less. Valentina had concealed an investigation, changed his route, entered the cabinet, and created bait files under his authority. She had done it because any official warning crossed Marco's security desk. You should have come to me in person. Her expression tightened. I did at 6:32. Marco said you were meeting Judge Keene. Your calendar said the meeting was private. Dante remembered no meeting with the judge. He had been alone in the North Study reviewing the conclave terms. Marco had brought him coffee and said Valentina had gone home ill. The first personal contradiction settled into place. Valentina never went home without closing his next-day book in person. Who else knew about your test? No one. But I left a physical index in my desk because digital notes were compromised. She swallowed. Second drawer, red binding. The meaningful entries are every 7th line. Dante stood. Her good hand caught 2 fingers of his. The grip was weak, but deliberate. The phone Rocco found is not mine. It opened with your face. A rebuilt shell can carry my encrypted backup. Mine has a crescent scratch beneath the camera. I made it when I dropped it against your silver letter opener. Another stable habit. Valentina repaired objects instead of replacing them, a thrift learned before she entered Dante's wealthy world. He had teased her for keeping a cracked phone case. She had replied that scars were identifiers no counterfeiter respected. Where is the real one? Marco took it when he detained me. The monitor accelerated. Alina entered and ordered the conversation over. As Dante reached the door, Valentina said, "If he knows I survived, he will erase the red book." Dante called Marco and told him Valentina had died in surgery. There was a pause of less than a second. "I am sorry," Marco said. Dante looked through the glass at the woman whose pulse still moved on the screen. "So am I." At 10:03 p.m., Dante returned to the estate in the second decoy ambulance while Marco believed him to be traveling toward the conclave. Rain sheeted across the grounds. The ballroom remained sealed, its broken chandelier hanging above a dark stain on the marble. Dante entered through the service corridor with only Luca Ferraro, his 26-year-old legal advisor, and 2 guards whose families had served the Morettis for generations. Luca was lean, careful, and incapable of hiding nerves from Valentina. She had once told Dante that Luca tapped his thumb twice against his index finger before disagreeing with someone powerful. He was doing it now. If Marco sees us access her office, he will know the hospital report was false, Luca said. Then he cannot see us. Valentina's office sat behind Dante's, modest despite the authority concentrated inside it. Her desk was orderly. The second drawer showed fresh scratches around the lock. Inside were stationery, a sewing kit, emergency medication, and 3 red notebooks. "Which one?" Luca whispered. Dante checked the bindings. The oldest opened flat from use. The newest smelled of glue. The middle volume contained dates spanning the last 6 months, every 7th line. Read alone formed a log of anomalies, duplicated approvals, altered visitor times, security tickets closed without investigation, and vehicle requests accessed before authorization. One entry named the first verifiable event. On May 18 at 2:11 a.m., a secure camera update had been signed by Marco's administrator credential while Marco attended a charity dinner beside Dante. That did not clear him. His credential could be delegated or stolen. But Valentina had written a hardware serial number beside the entry. Luca searched the equipment registry. The serial belonged to a portable maintenance terminal assigned to Ilias Venn, Marco's deputy. Ilias was the man who had supervised the sniper's transport. "Where is he now?" Dante asked. Luca checked the sealed personnel board. "Autopsy room with the body." They reached the underground clinic 2 minutes later. Ilias was gone. The sniper lay beneath a sheet, and the toxicology kit had been opened. Dante examined the restraints as a needle puncture marked the dead man's upper arm, hidden beneath an existing bruise. On the counter, an ampule labeled as saline carried a broken tamper ring. The door locked behind them. Gas hissed from the ceiling. "Vent." Dante pulled his coat over his mouth and shot the mechanical latch. The first round flattened against reinforced steel. Luca pointed to the emergency oxygen cabinet, but its glass front required a staff badge. Valentina's red book had listed a manual fire purge in the east utility recess. Dante crossed the room through the thickening haze, found the recessed lever and pulled. Fans reversed. The door seals released. His guards dragged them into the corridor as the room purged into an isolated exhaust stack. Ilias had acted within minutes of Dante's return. That meant someone had seen the supposedly secret entry. They found the surveillance path in the ceiling, a pinhole camera embedded inside a replacement smoke detector. Its transmitter led to a receiver above Valentina's office. The maintenance installation had been approved through Marco's division. But the purchase order came from a legitimate Moretti vendor controlled by Rocco Vale. The conspiracy was wider than one man. Dante sent Luca to duplicate the red book photographically, page by page, then returned the original exactly as found. He took the camera and ampule as physical evidence, each sealed and witnessed. The hospital's isolated recorder would later authenticate the time Valentina had been under guard, while the route distribution logs would establish which bait file reached which recipient. At 10:26, Marco called. "The Bellinis are demanding proof you remain in control. I can meet you at the river warehouse and escort you to the conclave. I will come alone." "That is unwise. So was letting a prisoner die under your deputy's supervision." Another fractional pause. "Ilias cannot be located. I believe he has betrayed us." Marco had named Ilias before Dante revealed the maintenance terminal evidence. It could be an intelligent inference. It could also be an attempt to sacrifice a subordinate. Find him, Dante said. After the call, Luca reported that a second convoy had left the estate using the Gray 4 route, the file given only to Rocco. It had not been attacked. Green 9, issued to Owen Shaw, had triggered a port police deployment, but no hostile movement. Blue 7 remained the only route the assassins had used. Level 1 evidence now proved the official story incomplete. Valentina could not have leaked all 3 routes, and only the route isolated to Marco had reached the attackers. But the evidence did not yet prove Marco knowingly shared it. Elias could have stolen access. Rocco's vendor could have installed the camera. Someone could be constructing a case designed to make Dante destroy his most loyal guardian. Dante called the hospital. Elena answered with the agreed phrase, "The roses are stable." Valentina remained alive. No attempt had reached the 7th floor. "Ask her about Elias Venn," Dante said. Elena returned after a minute. "She says Elias helped her verify the first duplicated token. He claimed Marco did not know. 2 days later, he withdrew his statement and told her to stop digging. That explained Elias's access and fear, but not his allegiance." Luca found another anomaly in the Red Book. Valentina had logged weekly 14-minute gaps in the estate's archived audio. Each gap occurred on Thursday at 1 a.m. During automatic encryption rotation, the live system showed no loss. Only the archive was altered. Tonight was Thursday, and the next rotation would occur in less than 3 hours. "Someone is using the gap to replace historical records," Luca said. And at midnight the families vote. The timing aligned. Once a temporary council controlled the port compact, revised records could legitimize transfers of Moretti assets before anyone restored the archive. Dante opened the photographed Red Book to every 7th line. The final encoded message was dated that afternoon. "MB does not want the port. He wants the witness list inside the compact." The redevelopment compact included a sealed federal amnesty schedule for dock workers prepared to testify against traffickers using the corridor. Only Dante, Valentina, Marco, and the federal mediator knew it existed. If the list changed hands, 32 witnesses and their families would be exposed before dawn. Dante had believed the vote concerned territory. Valentina had discovered it concerned lives. Then the hospital called without the coded phrase. Elena's voice was strained. Someone just used Dante Moretti's biometric authorization to order Valentina transferred to the city morgue. Dante reached East Catherine's at 10:49 p.m. The false transfer team had already entered the loading level in a private ambulance bearing authentic hospital contractor plates. Marco's security ring admitted them because their order carried Dante's current biometric seal and Elena's digital countersignature. Elena had never signed it. The transfer crew abandoned the ambulance when challenged. One attacker died in the exchange. Another escaped through the storm drain. A third was captured with a syringe of potassium chloride labeled as a routine anticoagulant. Their equipment included a body bag sized for Valentina and a forged death certificate time-stamped 20 minutes into the future. Dante entered her room after the threat was contained. Valentina was awake, propped slightly upright, her injured shoulder immobilized. A practical Navy hospital gown replaced the ruined blouse. Pain had sharpened her face, but her gaze remained steady. "You told him." "I died," she said. "I told Marco, and the transfer order appeared signed with my seal." She looked toward the rain-streaked window. "Then he kept the duplicate session alive after I rotated the token. Dante placed the sealed receipt beside her. "Can you prove the signature was printed?" "Not from the receipt alone. My office glass pad records pressure maps locally for 30 days. Marco took the pad with my phone." "Elias?" "He built the mirror for Marco. At first he thought it was an internal audit. When he realized it copied your live cue, he came to me. He was frightened enough to help, not brave enough to testify." Dante told her about the sniper's murder and the clinic trap. Grief flickered across her face. She had known Elias as a compromised witness, not an enemy. "We need the original pad and phone," she said. "The phone contains the session handshake. The pad contains the real pressure map. Together they can disprove the receipt and tie the counterfeit token to the maintenance terminal. Where would Marco keep them?" "Evidence vault at the river warehouse. Unless he has destroyed them." The vote was 40 minutes away, traveling to the warehouse, and then the conclave would consume most of it. Valentina could not leave the hospital without risking renewed bleeding. Dante could go, but Marco expected him there. "He wants you to choose the vote over me," she said. "He expects me to choose control. Will you?" The question held no plea. That made it harder. Dante had spent his life learning that hesitation killed. His father had died after delaying action against a cousin because blood seemed more reliable than evidence. Dante had built his authority on decisive judgment. Tonight that strength had become the weapon used against Valentina. He had seen convincing proof, acted publicly, and made correction more dangerous than consistency. "I choose the witness list," he said. "Without it, the port vote is meaningless." Valentina nodded once. "Then listen carefully." She dictated a route into the river warehouse that bypassed biometric doors through the old freight scale. She had found it while reconciling a renovation invoice. She also described a brass key slot beneath the evidence console. Her private office key, the one found on the sniper, was a duplicate cut from that master pattern. The planted key was not merely evidence against her. It was meant to suggest why she could enter the vault. Dante left Luca and Alina with the hospital ring and took 4 guards toward the warehouse. At 11:06, Rocco called demanding to know why the families were waiting. Dante told him to begin the vote without him. "You lose your chair if you are not present," Rocco said. "Then count carefully." At the warehouse, floodlights cut white bars through the rain. Marco waited beneath the loading canopy with 6 security officers. His posture was respectful, his expression concerned. "You should be at the conclave," Marco said. Valentina survived. For the first time, Marco's control slipped. Not much, only a tightening around his eyes, but Dante saw it. "Then the surgeon lied to us." "I lied to you." Marco's hand remained away from his weapon. "Because you suspected me." "Because Blue 7 reached the ambush." "Elias accessed my account and ordered a dead woman transferred with my seal? If Valentina is alive, she can answer for the receipt, the key, and the money." Marco's voice softened with practiced sorrow. "Dante, grief is making you confuse sacrifice with innocence. A conspirator can save the target if the assassination fails, and she needs to restore trust." It was a plausible explanation, which was why Marco was dangerous. Dante asked to inspect the evidence vault. Marco refused on procedural grounds. The materials had been sealed for presentation to the 5 families. Opening the vault without witnesses would compromise their value. "Bring the families here," Dante said. "There is no time. There is enough time to kill a prisoner, forge a morgue order, and erase an archive." The officers shifted. Marco did not. Then Rocco's convoy swept into the yard carrying representatives of the Bellini, Conti, Salerno, and Greco families. Marco had summoned them before Dante arrived. The public confrontation he needed and feared had come to the warehouse. Rocco emerged holding Valentina's real phone in a clear pouch. A crescent scratch marked the camera. "Found in Marco's private safe," Rocco announced, along with the secretary's glass signing pad. Marco turned toward him in genuine surprise. Rocco smiled. Gunmen rose behind the warehouse windows. The floodlights went out. In the first burst of fire, Marco shoved Dante behind a concrete barrier and took a round through the side. The man Valentina had identified as the traitor had just saved Dante's life. The warehouse attack lasted 92 seconds. Dante's guards pulled the family representatives behind armored vehicles, while Rocco's hidden gunmen fired from the upper offices. Marco, bleeding through his shirt, directed return fire with the same disciplined precision he had used for 20 years. Dante climbed the freight scale housing with 2 guards and entered through the maintenance passage Valentina had described. They reached the upper offices from behind, forcing the shooters to abandon their positions. Rocco escaped in the confusion with Valentina's phone and signing pad. 3 attackers were captured. None belonged to Marco's regular security roster. Their weapons came from a Moretti shipment. Rocco had reported stolen 2 months earlier. The evidence vault had been opened before the families arrived. The transfer receipt and planted office key were gone. At 11:27, Dante knelt beside Marco beneath the loading canopy. The older man's wound was through and through, below the ribs. Pain made his words clipped. Rocco said he found her devices in my safe. He planted them or expected you to believe he did. Why did Blue 7 leak through your channel? Because Elias used my credential. I found the duplicate session yesterday and told him to contain it quietly. I did not tell you because the federal mediator warned that any internal panic would scatter the traffickers before the witness list could be secured. You blocked Valentina. Marco looked away. I thought she was the breach. Her audit touched every compromised system. Elias showed me the receipt before she could explain. I canceled her lock change, took her phone, and built the case against her. You gave Rocco the opportunity to copy the evidence. Yes, the admission cost more than the wound. My mistake made his framing possible. Marco had not betrayed Dante for money or power. He had made the same moral failure Dante had made. He trusted a coherent accusation more than the woman accused, then concealed uncertainty to preserve authority. The 3 contradictions now aligned. Personal. Valentina had never abandoned her closing routine, despite Marco's claim she left ill. Technical. The signature appeared on a receipt created through a duplicated session, while her hands and location were verifiable. Adversarial. Rocco knew the hospital transfer had failed before the information was shared, and arrived at the warehouse carrying the very devices necessary to authenticate the forgery. Rocco, not Marco, had given Dante the phone. Valentina's warning had been exact from the beginning. The conclave opened without Dante at 11:30. Under emergency rules, the families voted to suspend his port authority pending proof he remained capable. Rocco presented himself as the Moretti proxy and claimed Dante had been manipulated by a treacherous secretary. The temporary council accepted him by a narrow margin. With the vote, Rocco gained legal access to the redevelopment compact's sealed annex. Dante ordered the federal mediator to quarantine the witness list, But the mediator reported that the archive showed Dante had authorized Rocco's access at 10:58. The forged approval existed in 3 redundant systems. At midnight, unless they produced authenticated proof of the duplicate signing session, the transfer would become irreversible under the compact's emergency continuity clause. 33 minutes remained. Marco's men traced Rocco's convoy to an abandoned ferry terminal across the river. Dante prepared to pursue, but Elena called from the hospital. Valentina was gone. She had not been abducted. Hospital footage showed her leaving the 7th floor in a wheelchair with Luca, her injured arm secured and an IV bag beneath her coat. Elena had protested until Valentina showed her a message from Rocco. "Come alone to the ferry terminal or the first witness family would die at midnight." The message included a live image of a dockworker's wife and 2 children bound inside a shipping office. "She knew you would stop her," Elena said. She said that was why she did not call. Dante's anger rose, but it had nowhere righteous to land. Valentina was doing what she had done in the ballroom, putting herself between his failure and its consequence. Luca answered on the 3rd call. Wind battered his microphone. "She made me drive. We are 2 minutes from the terminal. Turn around." Valentina's voice came faintly from beside him. "If we turn around, Rocco publishes the first names. You cannot stand." "I don't need to stand. I need my phone within 10 feet of his mirror terminal." The real phone contained the original hardware handshake. If it connected to the stolen terminal, it could record the device identity and prove the duplicate session. But Rocco controlled the phone. "He will search you," Dante said. "He expects a wounded secretary with no leverage. Let him." "Valentina, you asked why?" "I moved before the rifle appeared." The chandelier reflected the gallery. "I saw Rocco touch his cuff, twice the signal he uses to confirm a door is secure. He was looking at the shooter. Not at you, I knew, because I have watched him lie for 4 years." The call broke. Dante stared across the rain toward the river. The ferry terminal lay 12 minutes away by road, 8 by patrol boat. Marco, pale but conscious on a stretcher, caught his eye. "Take my river team," Marco said. She was right. I was protecting procedure while she was protecting people. Dante boarded the patrol boat as the archive clock reached 11:34. For the first time since inheriting the Moretti chair, he was following Valentina's plan instead of issuing one. Ahead, the abandoned terminal appeared through the rain. A single office window glowed above the black water. Valentina's location signal vanished as she crossed inside. Luca pushed Valentina's wheelchair through the ferry terminal at 11:39 p.m. Rain blew through broken panes and silvered the concrete floor. Beneath a dark wool coat, she still wore the Navy hospital gown. Her left arm was fixed against her body, and every jolt pulled at the fresh surgical wound. She controlled her breathing by counting the expansion joints beneath the wheels. Rocco waited in the former ticket hall with 8 gunmen. The dockworker's family appeared on a monitor behind him, alive in a windowless office. Valentina's scratched phone and glass signing pad rested beside a maintenance terminal on a metal desk. "You came," Rocco said. "Release the family. At midnight. At midnight you no longer need them. That makes the promise worthless." Rocco smiled. "Dante should have listened when I said you were dangerous." He searched the wheelchair and found no weapon, transmitter, or phone. Luca was disarmed and restrained near the entrance. What Rocco did not find was the passive near-field tag taped beneath Valentina's IV clamp. It had no battery and emitted no signal until another device queried it. Valentina had taken it from the hospital medication scanner, where such tags authenticated restricted drugs. Its serial number had been entered into the isolated hospital recorder before she left. "You used me to create the forged receipt," she said. "You created it yourself. You opened the cabinet, rotated the token, changed the route, and transferred money. I merely helped people understand what those actions meant. False evidence worked best when every component began as truth." Rocco had learned that lesson from watching her build Dante's files. He explained enough because he believed she would not leave. For 18 months, he had used Elias's mirror to copy approvals before execution. Rocco's vendor installed the maintenance hardware. Elias, thinking it was a security audit, created the duplicate session. When he discovered the witness annex, he tried to withdraw. Marco frightened him into silence while Rocco used his access. Valentina's investigation forced the timetable forward. "You killed Elias," she said. "He chose the wrong hour to become honest." The admission was not recorded. Rocco had swept the room. Valentina did not react, and the sniper? Disposable. You were supposed to be arrested before the shot. When you moved, you made yourself useful again. Rocco turned the maintenance terminal toward her. The screen showed the federal witness annex behind an encryption gate. Dante's forged authorization had opened the outer layer. The inner layer required a second trusted device handshake before midnight. Valentina's phone was that device because her office managed compact filings. "Unlock it," Rocco said. "My face will not work while the phone is in evidence mode." "Then disable evidence mode. I need the signing pad." Rocco placed both devices on her lap. The mistake was believable because the hardware still appeared under his control. Valentina connected the phone to the glass pad and entered a recovery sequence. In reality, she triggered a diagnostic loop she had written months earlier to test corrupted peripherals. The phone queried every near-field identifier within 10 feet. It found the hospital tag beneath her IV clamp. It found the maintenance terminal. It found the cloned signing token attached to the terminal's rear port. The handshake log wrote simultaneously to the phone's secure element and the signing pad's immutable service partition. Rocco could destroy one and the other would survive. "It needs my signature," Valentina said. "Untie my right hand." He did not. "Use your thumb." She pressed it to the pad. The device displayed an error because a pressure signature required movement. Rocco swore and cut the restraint around her right wrist. Valentina signed slowly. The system opened not the witness annex but a decoy folder containing obsolete doc schedules. Rocco's expression changed. "You altered the recovery path. 3 weeks ago, he struck the back of the wheelchair." Pain flashed white through her shoulder. She refused to cry out. Outside, Dante's patrol boat cut its engine beneath the ruined South Pier. He and 4 guards climbed through a maintenance ladder, while Marco's river team approached openly from the north to draw Rocco's attention. Dante heard Rocco's amplified warning through the terminal speakers. Any breach would trigger the release of the witness names and the execution of the hostage family. Dante could not rush the room. Valentina had known that her plan depended on making Rocco believe he still needed her. At 11:45, the phone completed its diagnostic loop. Valentina saw a green service light blink once along the cracked case. Level 2 evidence now connected Rocco's terminal to the counterfeit token and preserved a timestamp tied to the hospital tag. It did not yet prove his purpose or knowing participation. She needed him to execute the forged authorization. "The real annex is not in the compact server," she said. "Dante moved it after I found the mirror." Rocco leaned closer. "Where?" "Inside the archive rotation package. It appears for 14 minutes at 1 o'clock. It was partly true. The archive rotation contained encrypted reference pointers, not witness identities. Rocco would have to alter the live schedule and expose his administrative control to reach it. He ordered a gunman to prepare the ferry terminal's isolated satellite uplink. That action gave Dante what he needed. 2 guards left the hostage monitor, and Rocco inserted his personal administrator key into the terminal. From the shadows above the ticket hall, Dante saw Valentina glance once toward the chandelier-like reflection in the rain-dark glass. She had located him without turning her head. Then she looked at Rocco and said, "If you want the list, you have to keep me alive until 1. The midnight deadline had become 75 minutes. She had bought the witnesses time, but she had also given Rocco a reason to take her somewhere. Dante might not be able to follow. Rocco moved the operation at 11:51 p.m. He placed Valentina and Luca inside an armored transport, took the phone, pad, and terminal, and sent the hostage family toward a separate location under guard. Dante could not intercept both vehicles without risking an automatic data release. Valentina had anticipated the split. Before leaving the hospital, she instructed Elena to notify the federal mediator that any emergency relocation order lacking a physical blue seal was false. The hostage transfers displayed no such seal on the live camera. The mediator froze all witness movements and dispatched a vetted recovery team to the office identified by architectural details in the video: green fire door, 1980s sprinkler heads, and a river-facing ventilation grill. Luca had recognized it as Rocco's old customs brokerage near Pier 14. Dante followed Valentina's transport from a distance while Marco's river team diverted to the hostages. He did not know the federal team was moving until Elena relayed the message through the hospital's isolated line. The separation of knowledge was deliberate. If Dante's channel remained compromised, he could not betray a location he did not possess. The transport stopped at the Moretti Data Archive beneath an abandoned insurance building in Lower Manhattan. Rocco had chosen a site protected by Dante's own access rules. During archive rotation, outside network connections were disabled, doors were mechanically sealed, and only the senior security credential still assigned to Marco could override the cycle. Rocco intended to make Marco appear responsible for the final theft. Inside, Valentina was transferred from the wheelchair to a padded office chair because the lower corridors were too narrow. 2 gunmen carried her down the stairs, aggravating her wound despite Elena's reinforced dressing. She tracked turns and door sounds. Luca remained above as leverage. At 12:07 a.m., the 5-family council formally recognized Rocco as temporary Moretti proxy. He broadcast the decision to the archive guards and ordered them to admit him. 2 complied. 1 refused and was locked in a side room rather than killed. Rocco still needed the occupation to resemble lawful succession. Dante reached the insurance building at 12:11. He could not enter through the public stair without alerting the archive. Marco, receiving blood and fluids in a mobile medical unit, gave him a forgotten option. A pneumatic document conduit ran from the former underwriting office to the archive's outer vestibule. It was too narrow for a person, but wide enough for a fiber camera and a small evidence pouch. Dante sent the camera down. It showed Rocco's men connecting the stolen terminal to the archive console. He also sent a Faraday pouch containing a blank hardware authenticator. On its casing, he wrote 3 words in pencil: "Your plan, your call." Valentina saw the pouch emerge behind a filing pedestal. When a guard turned away, she pulled it beneath her coat with her good hand. The blank authenticator could copy only one key exchange. She had to choose between capturing Rocco's access to the archive rotation and preserving the phone's existing diagnostic proof. She chose the archive. At 12:19, she told Rocco the secure element required a cold reboot. He placed the phone into the Faraday pouch, believing it would isolate competing signals. Valentina substituted Dante's blank authenticator beneath the phone. When Rocco connected his administrator key, the device captured the full challenge response exchange. Level 1 showed the official story was false. Level 2 tied Rocco's terminal and cloned token to the forgery. The new capture could become Level 3 if independently corroborated by the archive's write-on's mechanical audit drum. That drum sat behind a sealed panel and stamped every administrative action onto microfilm. No digital credential could alter it during the rotation. Valentina had discovered it while arranging the archive's insurance inspection. Rocco knew of the electronic logs but not the obsolete drum. She needed him to perform the theft after 1 o'clock. At 12:26, the federal team rescued the hostage family at Pier 14. 1 guard surrendered, another was wounded. No hostage was harmed. Elena sent only the phrase "the harbor is clear" through the isolated line. Dante understood. Rocco did not yet know his leverage was gone. Dante could now attack, but Valentina shook her head when the fiber camera turned toward her. She pointed subtly to the clock and then to the sealed panel. He recognized the choice. Arresting Rocco now would prove unauthorized possession and kidnapping. But the 5-family council might still treat the port authorization as legitimate and the digital records as disputed. Waiting could expose the full objective and preserve the witness list permanently. Trust required Dante to let Valentina remain in danger while following a strategy he did not control. He waited. Rocco spent the next half-hour building his fallback. He ordered the council to convene at the Port Authority's public compact ceremony at 2 a.m., where emergency transfers would be certified before officials and family representatives. He planned to appear with the stolen annex and expose selected witness names as traitors, forcing the families to accept his control. If the archive attempt failed, he would accuse Marco and Valentina of fabricating the breach after Dante lost the vote. Valentina listened and memorized every instruction. She asked technical questions in the submissive tone Rocco expected from a wounded employee. Each answer revealed another element of his purpose. At 12:58, the archive lights shifted from white to amber. Steel bolts closed through the doors. The 14-minute rotation began. Rocco inserted Marco's stolen override key, Dante's cloned signing token, and Valentina's authenticated phone. The mechanical audit drum started turning behind the wall. "Open the witness pointers," he ordered. Valentina entered the decoy route. The terminal displayed 32 encrypted reference numbers. Rocco copied them to his administrator key and replaced the destination certificate with one issued to his customs brokerage. The audit drum stamped every step. At 1:06, Valentina removed the blank authenticator from beneath her coat and slid it into the document conduit. Dante pulled it out from the other end. For the first time that night, they possessed proof Rocco had not created, controlled, or anticipated. Then a red light appeared above the conduit. Rocco looked toward the wall. "Someone opened the outer hatch," he said. He crossed to Valentina, pressed a pistol beneath her chin, and ordered the guards to flood the vestibule with fire suppression gas. Dante heard the gas valves open. At 1:07 a.m., he withdrew the fiber camera, sealed the document conduit, and moved his team to the building's old elevator machinery room. The archive suppression system used inert argon, not poison, but the outer vestibule would become unbreathable within 90 seconds. Rocco expected any intruder to retreat or collapse. Marco supplied the countermeasure from the mobile unit. During a renovation 10 years earlier, he had insisted on a manual damper above the elevator shaft. Dante climbed the service ladder, cut the retaining wire, and redirected the gas into an empty storage plenum. The maneuver consumed 6 minutes. By then, the archive rotation had ended and Rocco had moved Valentina through the lower garage. He left Luca behind, alive but bound, with a message. Attend the 2 a.m. port ceremony alone, renounce the Moretti chair, and certify Rocco's authority. Otherwise, Rocco would kill Valentina and release the supposed witness list. The reference numbers Rocco stole were decoys. But the families did not know that. Publicly exposing them would still cause panic, scatter protected witnesses, and destroy confidence in the compact. Dante could not simply announce that the list was false without revealing the security architecture designed to protect the real one. Luca authenticated the captured exchange against the phone's diagnostic log. The two records shared the same cloned token certificate and terminal serial. The hospital tag proved Valentina, and the phone had been at the ferry terminal when the handshake occurred. The archive authenticator proved Rock's administrator key executed the transfer. Still, the council could argue the files were manufactured unless they recovered the microfilm audit drum. When Dante opened the sealed panel, the drum was gone. Rocco had discovered it after the red warning light and removed the cartridge. He now carried the only independent record capable of turning technical evidence into undeniable proof. At 1:29, Dante returned to St. Catherine's long enough to change his blood shirt and organize the evidence. Marco lay in recovery after emergency surgery. His injury prevented him from attending. But he recorded a statement accepting responsibility for suppressing Valentina's audit and identifying every credential stolen from his office. It was not exoneration. It was corroboration and a public surrender of authority. "I taught you that admitting error invites attack," Marco told Dante through a pale, exhausted face. "I was wrong. Hiding error gives an enemy ownership of it." Dante removed Marco as security chief, effective immediately, then asked him to serve as a witness. The distinction mattered. Consequences could not disappear because loyalty returned at the last moment. At 1:42, Dante entered the Port Authority atrium. The redevelopment compact ceremony had been moved into the glass-walled customs hall overlooking the container yards. Rain hammered the roof. Representatives of all 5 families occupied the front rows alongside port commissioners, attorneys, and federal observers. The event had to continue because suspending it would void labor protections and release emergency cargo holds across the harbor. Rocco had chosen a venue where public urgency protected his timetable. Valentina sat on the stage in a wheelchair, now wearing her dark coat over the hospital gown. A fresh line of red had reached the edge of her shoulder dressing. Rocco stood behind her with one hand on the chair and the other resting near his concealed weapon. To the audience, she appeared to be his detained co-conspirator. Dante walked forward alone in a midnight blue suit, open collar revealing the tattoos across his neck. His face remained cold, but Valentina saw the tension in his jaw when he noticed the blood. Rocco presented the official narrative. Valentina had sold the convoy route. Marco had covered the breach. Dante, emotionally compromised by his secretary's sacrifice, abandoned the conclave and endangered the compact. Rocco had recovered the witness annex and preserved continuity. He displayed the transfer receipt, office key, and selected video clips. Each piece carried enough truth to survive a casual challenge. Dante did not interrupt. The council chair asked whether he accepted the emergency vote. "I accept that I failed to investigate before condemning Valentina Russo," Dante said. "I accept that my decision exposed her to an assassin and gave the real conspirator access to this compact." Murmurs spread through the hall. Rocco had expected denial. Dante gave him confession. Therefore, Dante continued, "I will not claim authority until the evidence is heard. Valentina will present it." Rocco leaned close to her. "Say one word outside the script, and the names go public." Valentina looked at the audience. "The transfer receipt is genuine paper, carrying a counterfeit pressure signature. The route change is genuine. I made it to identify the compromised channel. The cabinet access is genuine. I used it to terminate a mirrored signing session." Rocco smiled at the council. "She admits every act." "Yes," Valentina said, "because false accusations are strongest when they are built from honest actions." She explained the 3 bait routes, the duplicated token, and the diagnostic handshake. Luca distributed authenticated copies of the hospital log and captured exchange. Federal technicians confirmed the timestamps were internally consistent. Rocco produced the microfilm cartridge. "This is the archive's independent record," he announced. "It shows Marco Bellandi's credential performed the transfer under Dante's seal. Her technical theater changes nothing." He handed it to the federal mediator. Valentina's composure faltered for the first time. The cartridge should indeed show Marco's stolen override, Dante's cloned seal, and her phone. Without context, it might reinforce Rocco's story. Rocco bent beside her. "You built a perfect chain of evidence," he whispered. "You simply forgot I could carry the last link." On the atrium screens, a countdown appeared. 60 seconds until the annex certificates became permanent. Rocco had reached the apparent victory he designed, if Dante seized him. The council would call it force. If Valentina failed to rebut the microfilm, the transfer would be certified in front of every relevant witness. Dante looked at her, waiting. Valentina closed her eyes and remembered the physicals index in her red notebook. Every 7th line mattered. So did every 7th archive stamp. "Advance the microfilm 7 frames at a time," Valentina said. The mediator hesitated as the countdown reached 52 seconds. "Why?" "Because the archive drum records user commands on every frame, but it embosses the hardware source on each 7th frame." Rocco knew about the commands. He did not know about the maintenance embossing. The federal technician advanced the reader. Frame 7 showed Marco's credential. Beneath it, almost invisible, was the serial of Elias Ven's maintenance terminal. Frame 14 showed Dante's cloned seal and the same terminal. Frame 21 recorded the destination certificate. Rocco Valley Customs Brokerage. The atrium went silent. Rocco recovered quickly. Elias used my company without authorization. Valentina had access to his terminal. This proves nothing about me. It was the rebuttal Valentina expected. Then revoke the transfer, she said. Use your administrator key. If you never executed it, the key will not match. Rocco looked toward the countdown. 38 seconds. The transfer protects the witnesses, he said. The numbers you copied are decoys. The real witness annex never entered the rotation package. For the first time, Rocco's face lost color. If she was telling the truth, he had risked everything for useless references. If she was lying, allowing the certificate to mature still gave him control. Valentina pressed harder. Your brokerage certificate is the only destination on frame 21. Revoke it now and prove it was planted. Every exit was controlled by federal officers and family guards who had agreed to remain neutral during the evidence review. Rocco could not leave without declaring himself. He could not destroy the screens without appearing guilty. He could not let the transfer complete without attaching his certificate permanently. At 26 seconds, he drew his administrator key from inside his jacket and moved toward the console. Dante did not stop him. Rocco inserted the key and entered a revocation sequence. The console rejected it. Only the person who knowingly initiated the destination certificate could revoke during the final minute, and the system required a spoken confirmation for the legal record. Confirm objective, the console requested. Rocco stared at Valentina. Say it, she said. At 12 seconds, he understood the trap. Completing the transfer would authenticate his key. Revoking it would require him to describe the action. He chose a third option. Rocco pulled his pistol and seized Valentina by the back of her wheelchair. The movement tore her dressing and sent pain through her shoulder. He aimed past her at Dante. Clear the doors. Dante remained still, hands visible. His expression did not change, though rage burned in his eyes. The hostage family is safe. Your release trigger controls nothing. Rocco glanced toward the nearest screen. The federal mediator displayed a live image of the rescued family under protection at Pier 14. The countdown reached 0. The console announced, destination certificate matured. Initiating authority. Rocco Valley Administrator Key. Purpose code, external witness list acquisition. The microfilm drum had recorded the administrator key. The console recorded the purpose code Rocco selected at the archive. The captured handshake proved he controlled the cloned token. 3 independent sources now established access, knowing participation and objective. Level 3 was complete. Rocco fired at Dante. Valentina drove her heel against the wheelchair brake release and threw her weight sideways. The chair rolled down the slight accessibility ramp just as the shot passed above Dante's shoulder. Dante closed the distance, caught Rocco's gun wrist, and forced the weapon toward the floor. His hand tattoos stretched across his knuckles as he broke Rocco's grip. Federal officers restrained Rocco before Dante could do more. Valentina's chair struck the rail. Luca reached her first, supporting the injured side without pulling her arm. Alina, waiting with the medical team by prior arrangement, replaced the pressure dressing and checked her pulse. Rocco shouted that the families would never accept federal evidence and that Dante had surrendered his authority by confession. The Bellini representative stood. He confessed to a failure of judgment. You just authenticated your theft in front of us." One by one, the family delegates withdrew their recognition of Rocco's proxy status. The port commissioners froze his brokerage certificate. Federal officers arrested him for conspiracy, attempted murder, kidnapping, and theft of protected identities. The technical charges would come later, supported by evidence whose custody had been witnessed in the room. Dante approached Valentina. Only after Elena finished stabilizing her, he crouched so she would not have to look upward. "You knew the purpose code would speak aloud," he said. "I wrote the filing specification." Her voice was faint. "You never read the appendix. You told me it was dull. It was." For a moment, something almost warm moved behind his controlled expression. It vanished when he saw the blood on her coat. "You need surgery again, probably, and you rolled yourself into a gunman's line. You were standing there." The words recalled the ballroom without forgiving it. Dante lowered his gaze. "I stood there because I trusted your decision. Tonight you did. The qualification landed where it should." As Elena's team lifted Valentina onto a stretcher, the council chair asked Dante to resume the ceremony and accept restored authority. Dante looked at the signatures waiting on the stage, then at Valentina being moved toward the ambulance. "The compact continues under federal supervision," he said. "My vote will be cast by council. Before I accept any chair, the record will show what I did to the woman who saved this agreement." He followed Valentina out, not as an owner reclaiming what was his, but as the man responsible for repairing harm that power could not erase. Valentina spent 9 days at St. Catherine's. The second procedure repaired tissue torn during the confrontation, and the surgeons ordered 6 weeks of restricted movement followed by physical therapy. Dante did not ask her to work from the hospital. He did not install guards inside her room without permission. He placed a vetted protective team outside the floor and gave Elena sole authority over access. On the 3rd day, Dante visited with no files and no flowers. Valentina disliked flowers cut for apology. He remembered that she preferred living herbs. He brought a small rosemary plant in a plain clay pot and set it on the windowsill. "Marco resigned," he said. "His statement is with the federal prosecutor. He will answer for obstructing your audit, though he is cooperating. And Elias, his family will receive the truth, not a heroic version. He helped create the mirror, then tried to stop it, then lost his nerve. Rocco murdered him. All 3 facts belonged to him." Valentina approved of that. Redemption that erased responsibility was another kind of forgery. Rocco remained in federal custody without access to family counsel willing to carry messages. His customs brokerage had been placed in receivership. The port compact was amended so no single emergency proxy could reach protected annexes. Every signing action now required 2 independently held hardware keys and a delayed human review. "You read the appendix," Valentina said. "Twice. That must have hurt. More than the bullet missed me." The restrained answer almost made her smile. Almost. Dante then told her what he had done publicly. The 5 families received a complete correction, stating that Valentina had been falsely accused, and that his premature judgment enabled the conspiracy. The ballroom recording of her dismissal had been preserved rather than buried. Beside it, he placed his retraction, Marco's admission, and the authenticated evidence chain. Every captain who witnessed her humiliation would be required to witness the correction. "You cannot give me my old position back," she said. "I know. Even if I wanted it, I could not return as the secretary." Everyone watched you condemn. They would treat every decision as borrowed authority. I know that, too." He left without asking for forgiveness. 3 weeks later, Valentina entered the Moretti ballroom for the first time since the shooting. She wore a deep emerald wrap dress suited to the formal hearing, elegant over her soft curves, without restricting the healing shoulder. Her hair was gathered loosely, and a narrow medical support remained beneath her sleeve. She walked slowly rather than using a wheelchair, with Alina nearby and no one pretending the injury had vanished. Dante waited beneath the repaired chandelier in a tailored black suit. The captains, family delegates, port attorneys, and senior employees stood where they had stood during the accusation. He read the correction himself. He named each false conclusion, each ignored contradiction, and each consequence. He did not call his decision understandable. He explained why it had seemed reasonable, then accepted that power required a higher standard than reasonableness under pressure. He restored Valentina's seized assets, paid her medical and legal costs from his personal holdings, and created an independent compensation fund for the injured decoy guards and Elias's dependents. Finally, he turned to her. "Valentina Russo saved my life after I denied her dignity. She protected 32 witness families after I denied her judgment. The Moretti organization owes her more than gratitude. It owes her authority that cannot be withdrawn by one man's suspicion." He presented a charter creating an independent risk and integrity office with power to audit security, freeze disputed transfers, and report directly to a 3-member board rather than to the Moretti boss. Valentina would own a partnership stake in the legitimate logistics group if she chose to lead it. The position was not a promotion from secretary. It was a new institution designed around the competence everyone had relied upon without acknowledging. "And if I refuse?" she asked. "The office remains. The board selects someone else. Your restitution remains. Nothing is conditional." That answer mattered more than the offer. Valentina accepted the charter for review, not the job. For 2 weeks, she negotiated its terms through independent counsel. She added whistleblower protection, outside audits, and a rule forbidding Dante from removing the director without a recorded board vote. He accepted every structural limit and argued only over practical language. When she prevailed, he signed without resentment. 6 weeks after the shooting, physical therapy restored most of her shoulder movement. Some pain remained when rain approached, and a pale scar curved beneath her left shoulder blade. Dante never called it beautiful to make the damage romantic. He called it evidence of a debt he could spend years honoring but never claimed to have repaid. Valentina became the first director of Moretti Risk and Integrity on a 1-year contract with renewal at her discretion. She hired her own staff, including 2 analysts with no family connection. Luca became board counsel. Alina chaired the medical security review. Marco, after entering a cooperation agreement, was barred from operational authority but provided historical testimony under supervision. The relationship between Dante and Valentina changed more slowly. He stopped summoning her. He requested meetings. She stopped arranging his life and allowed him to discover how many details he had mistaken for effortless service. He learned to read his own briefing files, confirm routes through dual channels, and close his own day. Absence taught him the shape of her labor. Cooperation taught him the size of her mind. One evening in early spring, they stood on the terrace above the river, after signing the first clean quarterly audit. Valentina wore a burgundy dress beneath a light coat. Dante's open collar showed the familiar ink at his throat, his expression as stern and controlled as ever. The city lights moved across the water. "I loved you before the ballroom," he said. "I used that feeling as proof I could read you. Then I punished you when the evidence contradicted the woman I imagined." Valentina rested both hands on the railing. "Love without respect is only confidence in your own desire. I understand that now. Understanding is not the same as changing." "No." He looked at the signed audit between them. "This is change. Tomorrow has to be another." She studied him. He offered no demand, no dramatic vow, and no claim that saving each other had made them even. The cold restraint that once kept him distant now held him still enough to let her decide. Valentina stepped closer by her own choice. "Dinner," she said. "One dinner, somewhere without captains, contracts, or rifles. You choose the place." Naturally. Months later, when they appeared together at the public opening of the redeveloped harbor, Valentina did not stand behind Dante with a schedule in her hand. She stood beside him as a partner whose signature required no borrowed authority. The protected witnesses had begun new lives. The compact carried safeguards written from the failures that nearly destroyed it. Rocco awaited trial beneath evidence no single person could erase. Under the bright harbor lights, Dante offered Valentina his hand. He did not pull her toward him. He waited. She took it.